Welcome back to Pottawattamie County Routes. I'm Todd Studer. Today we are going to dismantle one of the most dangerous lies ever told to an entrepreneur. And what is that lie? I'm just waiting for the right time. You know, we often treat the right time like some kind of celestial event, something that requires the stars to align, the bank account to hit a specific comma, and the kids to be out of the house. But here in Pottawattamie County, we know that if a farmer waited for perfect weather to plant, the world's going to starve. That's today's topic. Just get going. If you're looking for all natural health solutions in Southwest Iowa, visit Bambi's Green Acres Natural Market. She's located at 805 South Main Street in Council Bluffs and has been serving the communities for over 30 years. Shop a wide selection of vitamins, supplements, essential oils, herbal remedies, diet aids. She's staffed with over 37 years of experience that can help you reach your health goals. Bambi's Green Acres Natural Market, putting health in your hands. If you have a leak, a clogged drain, or if you're planning a big remodel, Waldstein Plumbing in Council Bluffs has you covered with fast, reliable service and expert craftsmanship, handling everything from small repairs to major installations. They're locally owned and trusted and take pride in doing the job right the first time. Residential or commercial, big or small, when plumbing problems strike, call Waldstein Plumbing. Visit waldsteinplumbing.com. The concept of the right time, this is a psychological defense mechanism. Now, this is not a therapy session, but I've actually heard this in therapy. This is a sophisticated form of procrastination, and it feels like preparation. When you say you aren't ready, what you're actually saying is that you are afraid of the vulnerability that comes with being a beginner. Perfectionism, that's just fear in a tuxedo. It looks professional. It looks like due diligence, but really, it's just a barrier keeping you from the arena. Waiting for perfection assumes that the world is static, but the market is a moving target. If you wait until your product is flawless, someone else, someone who was willing to be messy but fast, will have already captured the audience's attention. The right time isn't a date on the calendar, it's a decision. It's the moment you decide that the pain of staying where you are outweighs the fear of failing at something new. So, in our first leg of this episode of Pottawattamie County Routes, we have to acknowledge that the only way to find the perfect conditions is to create them through momentum. You don't find a path, you beat one into the ground. If you're sitting in your office today staring at a business plan that you've been tweaking for 6 months, realize that those tweaks are likely diminishing returns. The most valuable data you can get isn't in a spreadsheet. It's the reaction of your first customer. The myth of the perfect start also ignores the reality of human growth. You aren't the person you need to be to run $1 million company yet. That person is forged in the fires of the not quite ready stage. By delaying your start, you are delaying your evolution. You're staying in the larval stage because it's safe, but the world doesn't reward safety. It rewards movement. Now, let's look at the topography of Pottawattamie County. We have hills, we have flatlands, and we have unpredictable seasons. If you wait for a day where there's no wind and the temperature is exactly 72 degrees, you're going to be spending your whole life indoors. Success is about operating in the wind. It's about starting the venture when you're still a little bit shaky, when the logo is just okay, and when your website has a couple of typos. Perfectionism is a destination you never actually reach. It's a horizon line. The further you walk toward it, the further it moves away. So stop looking at the horizon and start looking at your feet. Take the first step right now, because the perfect time passed you by years ago, and the next best time is right this second. So as we continue on now with this episode of Pottawattamie County Routes, let's talk about the minimum viable product, or as I like to call it, the ugly version. There is a toxic culture in modern business that suggests everything needs to be at Apple level, polished on day one. This is a trap. If you look at the first version of Facebook, the first version of Amazon, or even the first tractors that rolled across Pottawattamie County, they're clunky. They were basic. They were, by modern standards, ugly. The purpose of starting before you're ready is to test the core hypothesis of your venture. Does anyone actually want what you're selling? You don't need a $10,000 brand identity to answer that. You need a solution to a problem. If your solution is powerful enough, people won't care if the packaging is plain. In fact, starting ugly allows you to pivot without the sunk cost fallacy. That's when you spend 3 years and a fortune perfecting a product before launching. What happens then? You become emotionally and financially married to it. If the market tells you they want something slightly different, you're going to resist that feedback because you've invested too much in the perfect version. But starting with a messy version, you remain agile. You are a speedboat, not a tanker. You can turn on a dime based on real-world feedback. This is the secret of the world's most successful ventures. They didn't start perfect. They started present. Being present in the market is worth more than 1,000 hours of theoretical planning. When we talk about the ugly version, we're talking about functionality over form. Does it work? Does it provide value? If you are starting a landscaping business, do you have a mower and a way to get to the lawn? If yes, start. Don't wait until you have a fleet of branded trucks and custom uniforms. The customer cares about their grass. They don't care about your shirt. This mindset shift is difficult because our egos are tied to our work. We want to be seen as experts immediately. We want the world to think we have it all figured out, but there is a certain integrity in the ugly start. It shows a commitment to the work over the image. It shows that you're more interested in solving a problem for your community here in Pottawattamie County than you are in looking cool on Instagram. Also, the ugly version creates a feedback loop. Your early adopters, those first few customers who buy from you when you're still figuring things out, become your greatest advocates. They feel like they're a part of the journey. They give you the raw, honest feedback that a perfect launch might miss. They tell you what you actually need, which is often very different from what you thought they needed while you were sitting alone in your basement planning. Don't let the lack of a polished exterior stop you. The polish comes later. The polish is the result of years of friction. Without the friction of real-world use, you'll never get that shine. So embrace the ugly start. Launch the basic website. Sell the prototype. Pitch the idea even if your slides aren't pretty. The momentum you gain from being in the game will provide the resources you need to eventually make it look like the masterpiece you have in your head. But for now, messy and moving is so much better than perfect and paralyzed. Now, moving on a little bit deeper here on Pottawattamie County Routes, we're going to address the education trap. There's a lot of people that believe before they start a venture, they need to read every book, take every course, and listen to every podcast on the subject. While education is valuable, there is a massive difference between passive learning and active learning. You can read 1,000 books on how to swim, but the moment you jump into the water, you're going to realize that the books did not prepare you for the sensation of the cold or the panic of sinking. The perfect start is a myth because the most important lessons can only be learned through the sting of failure. Theory is clean. Reality is messy. Here in Pottawattamie County, we value the dirty hands approach. You learn more about a business by losing your first $500 than you do by reading a textbook about macroeconomics. When you lose that money, the lesson is etched in your brain because it has a physical and emotional cost. When you wait for everything to be perfect, you're trying to bypass the failure stage. But the failure stage is where the magic happens. Failure is just data. It's just the universe telling you, no, not that way. We need to go this way. If you haven't started yet, you aren't collecting any data. You're just spinning your wheels in a vacuum of theory. Now, consider the iterative process. This is the idea that you launch, you fail a little bit, you learn, you adjust, and you launch again. This loop is the only way to build something truly great. If you wait to launch until you think you've eliminated all possibilities of failure, you've actually just ensured a much larger, more catastrophic failure later on. Why is that? Because you build a massive structure on a foundation of assumptions rather than a foundation of facts. Starting before you're ready forces you to become a problem solver. When things go wrong, and they will, you're forced to innovate. You're forced to find a workaround. That innovation is what eventually becomes your competitive advantage. You can't plan for innovation. It's a byproduct of necessity. Think about all of the entrepreneurs that you have met right here in Pottawattamie County. And on this show, I've met a lot. They started businesses in their garages. They didn't have the perfect logistics system. They had a problem, and they had a customer, and they had to figure out how to bridge the gap between the two using whatever they had on hand. That figuring it out phase is what builds the mental toughness required for a long-term successful run. So if you're waiting for a guarantee of success, you are in the wrong game. Entrepreneurship is the management of uncertainty. By starting now, despite the imperfections, you're practicing the most important skill in business, operating under pressure. You are training your brain to see obstacles as puzzles rather than stop signs. So put down the book for a moment and stop the endless research phase. Research is just often a socially acceptable way to procrastinate. You have enough information to take the first step. You don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. The light only reaches a few feet ahead of you anyway, so move forward. The light moves with you, revealing the next part of the path. If you stay still, the light stays still, and the rest of the path remains in the dark. One of the biggest reasons people wait for perfection, they feel they lack the necessary resources. They think that they need more capital, more employees, or better technology. But on Pottawattamie County Routes, here on this show, we advocate for resourcefulness over resources. When you have a lot of resources, you tend to throw money at problems. When you have no resources, you're forced to use your brain. Starting a venture before you have the perfect budget is actually a blessing in disguise. It forces you to be lean. It forces you to find the most efficient way to get a result. All right, think about the history of Pottawattamie County. The people who built this area, they didn't have the best tools. They had the most grit. They used what they had to get what they wanted. This same spirit applies to your new venture. If you don't have the money for a professional marketing firm, learn how to tell a story on social media yourself. If you don't have the money for a high-end office, work from your kitchen table. This scrappy phase is where your company culture is born. It's where you learn the value of a dollar and the importance of every single customer. If you wait until you have perfect funding, you might end up wasting that money on things you don't actually move the needle. Wealthy startups fail all the time because they lack the discipline that comes from being under-resourced. Furthermore, waiting for resources, that's often a trap. We live in an era where tools of production are cheaper than ever. You have a superpower in your pocket right now, or chances are you're holding the thing. It's your smartphone. You have access to global markets through the internet. The barriers to entry have been demolished. In the past, you might have needed a printing press or a retail storefront. Today, you need an idea and then the courage to hit publish. Resourcefulness is a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. By starting your venture in a state of imperfection, you are forcing that muscle to grow. You're learning how to negotiate, how to barter, how to make 1 + 1 = 3, if you will. These are the skills that will save you when the inevitable downturn comes, and it's coming. A person who has always had perfect resources will crumble when those resources disappear. A person who started with nothing and built it piece by piece knows exactly how to rebuild if things go sideways. Don't wait for the bank to say yes. Don't wait for an investor to validate your idea. If you believe it, find a way to start it with $50. Find a way to start it in your spare time. Lack of resources isn't your problem. It's your greatest teacher. It strips away the fluff and leaves only the essential. When you look at the successful ventures all throughout Pottawattamie County, you're going to find that the most enduring ones, they didn't start with a massive infusion of cash. They started with a person who was willing to work harder than anyone else and who was creative enough to find a way forward when the perfect path was blocked. Use your lack of resources as a catalyst for creativity. Your constraints are actually your competitive advantage because they force you to build a business model that is inherently efficient and resilient. So, wrapping up this episode of Pottawattamie County Roots, we're going to talk about the most powerful force in the universe: momentum. When you're standing still, the friction required to get moving is immense. It's like trying to push a stalled car. But once the car's rolling, even just a little bit, it gets easier. In fact, much easier to keep it going. Starting before things are perfect is about generating that initial push. It's about overcoming the static friction of your life. Once you take that first imperfect step, something magical happens. Opportunities begin to appear that were invisible when you're standing still. You meet people you wouldn't have met. You see openings in the market you would not have seen. The mantra, "done is better than perfect," should be tattooed on the inside of every entrepreneur's eyelids. A done project can be improved. A perfect project that only exists in your head provides zero value to the world. Doesn't pay the bills, doesn't help your neighbors here in Pottawattamie County, and it surely doesn't fulfill your potential. We often fear that if we put out something imperfect, we're going to ruin our reputation. But the truth is, most people, they're so focused on their own lives, they won't even notice your mistakes. And the ones who do notice, if they see you're going along and improving, well, they'll respect the hustle. People love a comeback story. They love seeing a business grow from a humble, shaky start into a local powerhouse. So think about all of the roads here in Pottawattamie County. It's why we call this show Pottawattamie County Routes. They weren't all paved and numbered on day one. They started as trails. Then they were dirt paths. Then they were gravel. Some still are. Only after years of use and necessity did they become the paved routes we drive today. Our venture is the same. It is a path that you're treading into existence. So if you're waiting for the perfect version, you are denying yourself the joy of the journey. There's an incredible satisfaction that comes from looking back a year from now and seeing how far you've come. You'll look at that first imperfect attempt. Yeah, you're going to laugh. You'll see how much you've learned and how much you've grown. But you can't have that reflection without the start. So here is my call to action to you. Stop overthinking. Stop the one more day cycle. Whatever that venture is, I don't know, you do. Could be a small shop in Council Bluffs, could be a new consulting firm, could be a new community project. Start it. Start it today. Put out the first version. Tell the first person. Make that first sale. The world does not need more perfect ideas gathering dust in journals. It needs imperfect action that solves real problems. It needs people who are brave enough to be seen starting small. Remember, every great thing you see today started as a good enough thing yesterday. One of those people is Cindy Schmader with Service Master Restored by Schmader, and she knows how hard it is to get back to normal when you've suffered serious property damage due to flooding, fire, or smoke, and that often leads to mold and leaves you with all sorts of questions. How do you get things back to normal? How do you do that? You call Cindy. Service Master Restored by Schmader is here to help. Call 402-339-9911. And when you're in the market for stylish, locally curated fashion that's close to home, Unique Boutique Iowa. They're at 101 4th Street in Neola and are your destination for trendy clothing, accessories, and distinctive gifts. They're open on Saturdays 10 to 2, Sundays 11 to 3, and always online at shopubiowa.com. Well, thank you so much for pulling up this episode of Pottawattamie County Roots. We hope that this episode has given you the kickstart that you need to stop waiting. Start doing. The roots of your life aren't pre-drawn. You're drawing them every time you choose action over perfection. Get out there. Get messy. Make some mistakes. Build something that matters. My name's Todd Studer. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning.